Welcome to the Sherman Report. Here's Peter Sherman.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Sherman Report for Thursday. We're live every day at 5 p.m., and in just 30 minutes, you get top stories with my comments interspersed. So I'm not a news guy. I'm a news commentator with a particular slant. Most of you who've watched before know what that is. You're obviously free to love it or hate it, but we love when you watch it. The show goes live on Facebook, X, LinkedIn, and YouTube, and it remains posted. So you can look at the older shows anytime. If you're later than 5 o'clock, you can look at them as soon as they're done. If you like a particular guest or a topic or want to see if anything I've said has actually come to pass, for example, you can tune it in, any of the shows. If you prefer audio while you're driving, for example, which is, don't look at me while you're driving, for God's sakes. The current day's show is available on all podcast sites in audio only, usually after 6 p.m. So tomorrow, make a note, our guest will be the MP for Thornhill and Deputy Leader of the Conservative Party, Melissa Lantsman. That's tomorrow at 5 o'clock. I thought giving you the spots to get the video or audio for the Sherman Report again would be worthwhile. Tell your friends. Please share on Facebook. It's how we expand and become more successful. Repost if you're using X. Share or register a like on LinkedIn. And thank you very much. Today, Stephen LeDrew, broadcaster, lawyer, man about town, and once upon a time liberal, but not anymore. He'll be here in about 15 minutes. Before that, a few comments from moi after this.
Now, the Sherman Report continues.
If you're a political wonk like me, you may have gone to Google to refresh your memory about the numbers yesterday. If not, I can give you the 30,000-foot view of what leverage parties have to topple the sitting Liberal minority government in Ottawa. The short form is that taking the Trudeau government down and forcing an election is not an easy-peasy thing for NDP leader Jagmeet Singh to do when Parliament opens on September 16th. And it is precisely because the numbers have to work to do that. In other words, the parties have to vote down the governing Liberals on a confidence motion, and that requires unity of purpose. Why did I put it that way? Because the parties in power have no unity of opinion, not in power, but in office. They have no unity of opinion on almost anything. So a unity vote by the non-Liberal members is what it would take, and the purpose would be to toss this government, and that would be the unity of purpose I'm talking about. So when you hear the simple math on these numbers, you will see why. The number of occupied seats in the House currently is 334. There are two by-elections taking place actually on the day that Parliament opens, September the 16th. But here's how it looks now. A majority vote has to be about 168. The Liberals have 154 seats, so they're 14 shy of that majority. Any of the three other main parties, the Conservatives, the Bloc, Quebecois, and the NDP, all matter. In a vote of non-confidence led by the Conservatives, for example, they would require the Bloc Québécois and the NDP to defeat the Liberals. No easy task, unless all three parties are ready to simply oust the Liberals at the same point. It's that simple. And here's more math. The Liberals have their 154 seats. The Conservatives plus Bloc Québécois equal 151. The Conservatives plus NDP equal 143. Two Green Party, three Independents. Any addition of those in any equation helps no one. So as Justin Trudeau knows all too well, he has to navigate the legislative waters, shark-infested though they may be, very carefully to retain ownership of election timing. Why? Because the Conservatives, the Bloc Québécois, and the NDP are by no means in love with each other, no matter which permutation is in play. That doesn't mean they couldn't all independently combine to vote the government down. They all have war chests, and they all want more power. Singh actually said yesterday that he's the progressive thinking guy for prime minister by taking his 24 seats and his 15% popular support in recent polls and adding enough seats across Canada to get a majority, that 168. I said this yesterday, and I'm happy to repeat it. In your freaking dreams, Jagmeet. So there are only four scenarios here. One, All three parties don't agree with whatever Trudeau and company are doing, resulting in a confidence vote that they win. 2, Trudeau calls a snap election before the end of September. All parties know that winter elections are pretty well not favored by voters and turnout is low. 3, Trudeau calls a spring snap election after fighting his battles all winter. Or 4, they all just keep on keeping on until next year when the clock runs out. I'm wondering what's happening behind the scenes, but then again, I always do. Parliamentarians are a savvy bunch where strategy is concerned, and we will keep watch. Make sure you join us tomorrow, again, when my guest will be Deputy Leader of the Conservative Party, Melissa Lantsman, also MP for my old Thornhill riding. She's a great talker, and more than any other politician I know, she's excellent at answering any direct question with an immediate direct response where possible. That here on the Sherman Report at 5 o'clock tomorrow. Back in one moment.
Now, the Sherman Report continues.
Okay, if you aren't obtaining or renewing a mortgage or financing a car, swimming in credit card debt, maybe you probably don't care much about the Bank of Canada having reduced its benchmark rate from 4.5 to 4.25% yesterday. If you are in one of those categories, it's not any giant leap for mankind, to coin a phrase. If you're in business and looking for an increased line of credit or an expansion loan, you are concerned too, but maybe a little less so than yesterday. All anyone can say is, well, it's a little progress. The Bank of Canada looks at a lot of inputs in rendering rate decisions, like the one made yesterday. One of the items is Canadian unemployment, and currently, unlike our southern neighbor, we have a high number. We're at 6.4% unemployment. So if the rate continues to climb, and that's likely, the bank will see it as a reason to further reduce the benchmark rate so that businesses can expand and then hire, or at least not lay anyone else off. Secondly, our home prices blazing hot situation, you remember that? Notably in larger centers, but really everywhere, has fizzled. And lower rates would restart that engine. Buy a new home, have some reno work done on it, buy new furniture, paint the walls, put up a fence, whatever. Lower rates help. Even in the last 24 hours, there are people talking about this 0.25% reduction, telling borrowers that they should apply now for variable short-term mortgage rates while awaiting further cuts. Word was that the bank did consider going all the way to 0.5%, which is significant, but let prudence hold them back. I think it's likely they will finish that job by taking another 0.25% off in October, which would bring the rate to 4%, and perhaps we end 2024 at 3.75%. For some perspective, the Bank of Canada rate, also known as the overnight rate, was never higher than 2% and usually quite a lot less from 2010 all the way to 2022 post-COVID. It jumped in July 2022 to 2.5%. Then it peaked at 5% in July 2023, where it held for a year. So it's down 0.75% since then, and highly likely to be at 4% by this time next month. I have looked at forecasts that concur and see the first half of 2025 at 3.5 and the latter half of 2025 down to 3%. Now that's when we'd be in the ballpark for fixed rate borrowing and many more home sales. And if those expectations materialize, those who are betting on shorter term variable rates versus fixed terms may celebrate. Time will tell, as it always does. So now Canadians can play a waiting game. Election, hurry up and wait. Bank rate, hurry up and wait. Home sales, same thing again. U.S. presidential debate coming up next for discussion right here on the Sherman Report.
You're with the Sherman Report. Daily news commentary available at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, with video posted on YouTube and Facebook. Here's Peter Sherman.
Yesterday, I was talking about Kamala Harris suggesting that X, or Twitter as it used to be known, should indeed have been shut down in Brazil as it was. The fine for trying to work around the so-called geofencing, if you happen to be in Brazil, is equivalent to about 8,900 American bucks. That's a steep fine for any one person just for looking at some tweets. So Why did she say what she said? She believes that too much power is vested in social media. Being able to address many millions around the world is simply too much, she says. Would she curtail it if elected? Well, I suppose that remains to be seen. I mean, both her actually being elected and whether she'd be able to smash social media's reach. I said that she'd be climbing a pretty high mountain. The United States of America has something called the First Amendment, as you know. First Amendment to the Constitution ensures freedom of speech and freedom of press, and I think both of those would come into play if anyone in high office tried to do what Brazil has done. So that's not the issue of all issues, but it shows that she has a tendency to shoot from the lip. And here's where the September 10th debate on ABC stands right now. Speaking of shooting from the lip, they've stopped the pissing contest over hot or cold mics, which just means deciding whether one opponent's microphone is muted while a question is directed at the other candidate. The mics will be muted. They've agreed to that when the opponent is speaking. I kind of like that idea. You don't have all this constant yelling in the background. Two things to bear in mind when you watch on Tuesday. Harris was a very successful prosecutor in California at one time, so she knows how to listen and to fire words back at an opponent, and she knows how to elicit some response that she particularly wants. Her ability to hear and assimilate words and turn things to her own advantage will not be anything like the Biden experience was, which was a disaster a few short weeks ago. That said, her presidential foray back in 2020 was nothing resembling a success. If she is seen to lose the debate, however, it'll be a loss of her own making. If she wins, she'll have injured an amazingly strong and savvy politician, despite the negatives his critics like to underscore. Here are some topics and factoids. Harris preps. She does her work. It's what lawyers do, or they're not successful lawyers. Trump wings it. He has an encyclopedic mind, and his critics would counter with, yeah, he thinks fast and he makes stuff up. Trump will pin Harris to Biden as much as he can and use the "are you better off" question often. And then there's gender. And here's what I mean about gender. I was schooled in political debate, and the first thing I learned about it was never to raise my voice, never to use body language, never to seek to diminish the character of my opponent when debating a woman. I am not being sexist in saying that, but generally, people are sexist and they get perturbed when they see a man beating on a woman, or what they perceive that to be. The main topics may be ageism. Trump used it against Biden successfully. Now it's advantage Harris, age 59. She'll try to trap Trump on abortion. She favors on demand. He favors states' rights. There will be talk of racism, to Trump having recently asked when Harris turned black. They seem like small things, but they're the stuff of like and dislike where voters are concerned. Finally, expect the unexpected. Both camps are full of people researching something to surprise the opposing candidate with and knock him or her off balance. Trump has been extremely effective at that very thing over time. However it turns out, Tuesday night, it will not be watching AGT or Password or streaming a movie. And if you follow this show, it's likely not going to be either. Back in one moment.
Now, the Sherman Report continues.
Quick word on Ukraine and Russia before we get to Stephen LeDrew and a discussion. Things are heating up over there, as if they haven't for 2 years, but now they're really hot. Yesterday, very severe missile attacks on a Ukraine military academy, a hospital as well, killing more than 50 people. Meanwhile, the Ukrainians continue to hold Russian territory, which is really pissing Vladimir Putin off. Just a side note, savages in Gaza can shoot 6 young Israeli hostages held for almost a year in the back of the head. And I look around and wonder who cares besides Jewish people. But the Ukraine war, meanwhile, goes on, and who's talking about it? We're helping to pay for it ourselves, and my own belief is it could have been avoided. Solid talks with Putin, whatever you think of Putin, before it ever started, could fairly easily have stopped this thing in its tracks, but it never happened. Ukraine's population has largely fled. You've probably met some Ukrainians right here in Canada as they settle into new lives. Hundreds of thousands of young Ukrainian and Russian lives snuffed out for what? Because old men think there's a fight in this? Well, without any negotiation, there was and there is a fight in it. In my view, the power and force lay with Washington. I believe those in control were only too happy to sell weapons of war manufactured in the United States. I am not a fan of Vladimir Putin, but his concern was having his country surrounded by NATO countries. NATO was formed by 12 countries originally in 1949. Now it's 32. There was, contrary to some expressed opinion, no cap on membership. Ukraine sought membership in 2022, but that has been in abeyance pending some kind of détente and an arrangement with the Russian Federation or Russia, which will have to come when war ends. Russia, for obvious reasons, isn't happy with NATO, which now has all but accomplished ringing Russia and putting NATO on its borders. Russia is well aware of the supply lines to Ukraine and where the weapons have come from. They are also clearly aware that they have not managed to rout Ukrainian troops from Kursk on the east side inside Russia. That would be why Russia has recently been saber-rattling again about using battlefield nuclear weapons, which nobody wants to see, at least nobody I know except Putin, and I'm not sure about that. This is called a war of attrition because it just keeps on getting litigated on the battlefield, theoretically, until there's no one left to kill, nothing left to destroy. You can differ with me if you like, but I believe Trump, whatever you may think of him, would get that war wrapped up quickly with negotiation, but Harris will not. In other words, people keep on dying. Stephen LeDrew standing by next.
Now, the Sherman Report continues.
Stephen LeDrew is a regular here on the Sherman Report. Last time, his camera winked out, and I had to talk to him on the phone. But today, bang, you can see him. There's Stephen LeDrew. And good afternoon to you. Broadcaster, lawyer, plugged-in guy all the way around with red glasses.
Good to be on your show, Peter. I heard your introduction, though, at the top of the hour, and I have to take issue with you because you said I'm no longer a liberal. I am a liberal. The Liberal Party is no longer liberal. Trudeau has never been a liberal. He is, quote, a progressive, do as I say. He's an autocrat. And I am a traditional liberal. Few of us are around, but there's a debate a week tonight, downtown Toronto at the National Club, to which you're invited, Peter, as about the Liberal Party being dead and killed by Trudeau.
That is, I have not, I can't say I haven't heard that before. And I'm not going to take issue with you. I would say it slightly differently. He has steered the Liberal Party away from being liberal. It is said by people probably smarter than you and I, Stephen, that every Canadian is a small L liberal. Most of us think abortion is okay, those kinds of base issues that are so highly litigated in the state or litigious in the States. Right. But the Liberal Party here is not small L liberal. You're right. I think it's more socialist than the NDP some days.
Oh, there's no question in my mind. Witness our Minister of Finance after the capital gains tax in her last budget, and doctors and small business people are complaining. And she said, why are you complaining? For doctors, she said, we will get more money from you doctors, and then the government will have more money to hire more people. To my mind, that's socialism. You know, we all get employed by the government sooner or later, and we pay everything we earn to the government. That's what she says. They are socialists. Well, they're progressive.
You know, I don't know if it's a conspiracy theory or not, but you read the same stuff that I do, and you read things about Trudeau being the fair-haired boy of Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum. You think there's anything to that? Because that's their agenda.
Well, I think there probably is. And one of the things, the mysteries of Canadian politics, and you and I both have complaints about mainstream news and what they do, what the mainstream news will not report, is that our deputy prime minister, our minister of finance, is on the board of Schwab's organization. Still, she is still on the board of directors. She flies government jets over there for the meetings when they are talking about what they want to do with the new order in the world. I mean, this is such a conflict. And
well, I've got to tell you, when it comes to Chrystia Freeland, I have a visceral negative reaction to the woman. I don't like the tone. I don't like the talking down. I don't like the Mr. Speaker. I don't like anything about her, and I don't think she knows anything about finance.
Well, yes, you're absolutely right on all of those points. I will agree. So you and I don't always disagree. I will agree with you, Peter, on all of the points you just made about her. I think that the reason our economy is in such a disarray is because she is the Minister of Finance. She's a journalist. She knows squat about numbers and squat about finance.
We come to a great agreement. So let me put you on the spot. Not that I'm really putting you on the spot. What do you think about the four scenarios that I threw out there before on when an election could come? Do you have a gut feel?
I think that Jagmeet was embarrassed into doing what he did this week, ripping up, as he put it, the agreement. And I think it was your number 4. We're just going to mamby-pamby along until a year from now, and more than a year from now, before there's an election. The reason why is that Trudeau wants to keep on this job. It's the best job he'll ever have. It's one of the best jobs in the world. And he is completely supported by his caucus because they all want the pensions. And in truth of fact, Jagmeet doesn't want to leave before October of 2025 because he wants his pension of millions of dollars.
I thought his pension vested in February.
But he gets a bigger one in October.
Well, what's possible? You maybe know more about pensions than I. I'm a lowly ex-MPP from Ontario, and Ontario is the only legislative body in the country that doesn't give pensions to its formers. So I can only envy those guys.
I'm a private practice lawyer. I have no pension either. So there we go.
Well, there we go. So you know what? With a gun to my head, if I were asked the same question, I'd say that's probably the one I'd pick, mainly because of that math I went through for everybody. To actually bring the government down, you need the three parties. You need the Bloc, you need the NDP, and you need the Conservatives to vote the same way. They're not going to do it because they're hugging each other. They're going to do it because they all want to pull the government down. And I'm not sure that's true right now. I think that Pierre Poilievre is champing at the bit, but I don't know how serious Jagmeet is in terms of the time frame he's got. And the Bloc Quebecois does what Bloc Quebecois does. It doesn't give a damn what anybody does.
I think you're absolutely right. I think you're absolutely right about Jagmeet. He is, as I said, he was embarrassed he was taunted by Poilievre. He had to do what he was doing this week, but that doesn't mean he's going to bring the government down. He is going to be very careful on each vote in the House, and the Prime Minister is going to be very careful on each vote in the House so that we do not have a confrontation, which, as you aptly and correctly described, we'd have the three parties together to vote against the government. We aren't going to have that. I mean, it's not going to happen, Peter.
So we agree again.
Yeah.
I'll ask Melissa Landsman to weigh in on that. She won't answer that question because she can't know.
Well, she can't know, but she's a fabulous politician, and she is smart.
She's incredible.
So I'll be interested in her answers to you tomorrow.
Yeah, very lucky to get her to come on board, and looking forward to it. Okay, let's leave that alone because I think we're gonna be talking election on and off for a long time to come. Maybe, as you say, next fall. There's an interesting survey out there. I started talking to Andy Stinton about this yesterday, but we never got there. He wanted to talk about Trump. So this survey was a result of work done by Sutherland House Books, and it played off the American ambassador to Canada floating this idea around. The bottom line being that a huge number of Canadians, I mean a significant number, are fixated on not what we're talking about. They're fixated on American news. They watch American newscasts. They subscribe to American papers. They watch American television programming. I tried this with Andy yesterday. As I say, he just said Canucks are boring. Was he right?
I think that a Connect news is boring. Aside from your show and my show, generally the news is boring. The newscasters are boring. We don't have sex appeal on, again, aside from your show and my show, on the news. And look at what's going on in the States. I mean, the Democratic Party has turned around amazingly in 4 weeks since the president said he was not going to be running again. I mean, there's a lot of action, pizzazz, and like him or not, Trump does provide a lot of
entertainment. Entertainment.
To the political debate. And who do we have? We have the Prime Minister, who this week, when the bottom was pulled out of his governance, so to speak, by the NDP, he says, I'm going to continue to provide good government to Canadians as I have for the last few years.
Oh, Stephen, horse shit. Okay, yeah. Horse shit. That's what it is.
I mean, Canadians tune him out now. When the Prime Minister speaks, they know he's a liar. They know he's a simpleton. They know that they've been getting crappy government for the last number of years. And so they just tune it out. It's like, and you were in provincial politics in the legislature in Ontario, it's like when Bob Rae was Premier of Ontario and everybody knew that he had completely screwed it up. He was a failure. The NDP and Jerry Kaplan were telling me, oh, we can win this in 95. Ontarians did not complain. They just said, bring on the election whenever it comes, and we're going to vote you out.
We'll take care of things. Yeah, well, so Andy thinks that Canadians are boring, so Americans turn to the more exciting channels, and you think the same thing. I guess I have to agree. I mean, I love getting involved in Canadian politics. It shows in most of these shows that I put on the web, but Americans, it's basically laugh a minute, cry a minute.
Yes, but look at the news. You have that in the American, cable news, broadcast news, Canadian news, and you look at our anchors, and God bless them, they try and they're nice people by and large. But the guys and the women who are writing the news, they want the lowest common denominator, which means it's boring. It's terrible.
You want to know what else they have? They have channels that are commercially driven to take opinions. The reason you're talking about my show, your show, is we are opinionated, but we talk about the news. We're doing it right now. Yeah. That's what Fox does. That's what MSNBC does on the right and left, respectively. CNN is busy trying to fit in the mushy middle, but there's a place for it too. We don't have those kinds of stations in Canada at all. And people under 50 aren't watching television anyway. They're watching streaming. So they're turning more and more to people like us because we're doing this.
And as it just came out 2 days ago, Peter, that the number of Canadians watching the network news, network shows in Canada is diminished again over the last quarter. I mean, people are just turning it off. So you're right on that. But we're having too much agreement.
They've had plenty of Liberal money to pay bonuses to the CBC upper echelon.
Just
saying.
$78,000 per person for those bonuses for executives who are losing viewership every day. Now, that's a very Canadian thing. We reward failure.
Well, I spent a lot of time in broadcasting. It wasn't the CBC. I never got a bonus.
Well, I mean, but people in the CTV and people in Global, even though Global is losing money like crazy and maybe gone in a few months, they get bonuses. The big shots get bonuses. You know that. I mean, that's the way it is in Canada. They get bonuses.
I'll just leave it at this, Stephen. Must be nice. Let's talk for a minute about the Bank of Canada rate. Went from 4.5 to 4.25. Most people go when they hear that news. But it is important to people who hold mortgages that they got in 2020, COVID year, basically, that are up for renewal, and they don't want to pay 5%. That's a huge whack from what was 2%, or maybe in some cases much less. So I think that this is important, and I'm wondering if you agree with me that this 4.25 now is going to become 4 next month, and maybe 3.75 before the end of 24.
I think that it's going in the right direction. I don't think there'll be much of a reaction from young homeowners or people with mortgages right now because they were waiting for what you just predicted to happen. They want to go down to 3.75 before they renegotiate. And so the Bank of Canada is very timid, very conservative. Maybe it should be, but I don't think we're going to see anything going on in markets, anything going on in consumer durables until money is cheaper again. It's just it was too little and not soon enough. So we'll just have to wait.
So we're probably out till at minimum January, and probably more like a year from now.
Well, I think that probably next spring. There's a lot of pent up demand. There are a lot of people say there's a housing problem. Well, you know what? There are a lot of houses around and condos around which are unsold, and so the government officials can say, "Oh, well, we need to build more houses." Government can never build houses. But I think we're going to wait. There's supply and there's demand, and we need lower interest rates to match those two, and they'll get matched next spring, I think.
Okay, one more quickie. We're going to go a little bit over time, but we're not held to anything. We're not on a television network. So I like this one. This is Toronto-centric, but this would be of interest to anybody watching us anywhere. Toronto is a traffic nightmare. Am I right, Stephen?
Absolutely. It's a disaster. I was there yesterday. You should look at the streets and you say, you got to get out of here.
It's horrible. It's terrifically horrible. So one of the things that people do is called blocking the box. And it's what it sounds like. It's going into an intersection before that intersection is cleared, then being caught in the middle when the other guys get the green light and they start honking because they're not able to cross. This is a constant thing in Toronto.
And everybody in every city, you're right, in every urban center, even in small towns, it happens.
That's right. So here's the thing. In Toronto, it's an $85 fine, but the cops don't even enforce it. So now council's talking about, we're going to go for enforcement and we're going to bump that fine to $450. Will it work?
I think it will work. But what's happening now with traffic tickets is that it's very difficult to go before an official or a JP or somebody if, in fact, you've been charged incorrectly. And I brought this up with somebody in Buckhorn today, one of my neighbors, who told me everybody hates those people, as you put it, who sneak through on a yellow light and then get stuck in the intersection and they screw it up for everybody. Everybody hates them.
Yes, I want to kill them.
Yes.
I use dirty words in the car with the windows closed.
Not with your grandchildren, I hope. Anyway, I know you would. But he said to me, he was at Jarvis and Lakeshore in Toronto. He was ready to turn left, and some guy came through the yellow light, which turned red, and stopped him, and he was stuck there in the block, in the square, as you say it. And he said people were honking at him and stuff. He said it wasn't my fault. I wasn't trying to squeak through. So you need to have a judge to go and explain that to. That other asshole made me stay here. There you go.
That's the way it is. And with that, Stephen, I'll say thank you for joining me this week, and we'll look for you soon again. Stephen LeDrew, a well-known Torontonian and a regular here on the Sherman Report. Take care.
Glad to be here. Hope to see you next Thursday at the debate. Is the Liberal Party dead? You're not right.
You know what? Flip me your digits. I want to talk to you about that.
Perfect. See you later, Peter.
Okay. Take care, Stephen. Stephen LeDrew. That's it for today, everybody. Remember, Melissa Lantzman, Deputy Leader of the Conservative Party, guesting here tomorrow. Come find us tomorrow and every evening when we're live at 5 p.m. on LinkedIn, X, Facebook, or YouTube, or check out my website, petersherman.com. Sherman is spelled with a U. Any comments or voicemails are welcome there, too. Have a very good night, and see you tomorrow.
The Sherman Report, available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and the video version at YouTube, Facebook, and always at petersherman.com. Thanks for listening to the Sherman Report. If you'd like to connect with Peter directly, just go to petersherman.com.